Hi, Stacey. Good morning.
Hold on. Video choose. Hold on. There we go. Let's see.
Hi, Stacey. Good morning.
Good morning. Man,
Hey,
I'm trying to
so
adjust
yeah,
with
go
the.
ahead.
All right, I think there we go.
Looks good. I think your lighting looks great, and I can hear you well as well.
All right, awesome, awesome, awesome. Um, Also, you have to give me sharing capabilities so I can share my screen.
Okay, let me do that now. So right now you're not seeing that ability, right?
Let's see here. When I click on share screen, it says one participant can share at a time. And let me see. Okay, hold on. I
Okay.
have now. Let's usually okay, share sound. There we go. All right. Can you see that?
Yep, I can see it from my end.
All right, hold on 1 second. I'm
All right.
trying to work with the controls. I gotta move this bar thing because it's in my way. Yeah, the other thing is okay. So you see the presentation?
Yep.
All right. Okay. And I'm in the little screen over to the side.
Yep.
Fabulous. All right. Um, the question that I did have was whether you're able to um put the workbook as a
Mhm.
link inside the chat, just in case people didn't have the opportunity to download it beforehand.
Yeah, I can do that because I turned it into a Google Drive link. So I'll do that as soon as everyone enters. Is that okay?
Yep, that is cool.
Cool.
Let me move this.
So
It's like so in my way.
let me know when you're ready and we can let everyone in.
Well, no better time than the present, because I do have to leave exactly at like an hour.
Okay, okay, all right. So I'm gonna start
So,
letting people in then.
okay, awesome.
All right, good luck. Have a good one.
Thank you. Let me see. All right, I think everyone is starting to come into the room. Hey, Jel and Anjali, if you can do me a favor, if you can go ahead and man the people coming in the room and those that are in the waiting room, that would be fabulous and stuff like that. All
Sure,
right.
no problem.
So I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. I know people are trailing in. I am so excited to be presenting with you. So thank you for being here, Bunny. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Colleen. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Melanie and Christy, right? So if I miss anybody, please excuse me. I just wanted to say thank you to some of the people that were here. And so let me just go ahead and say thank you to Tiny House University for having me teach again. So I first taught at the DIY Fest, and they asked me to come on back to teach you a new topic. So everybody, let's go ahead and get started so we can go into tiny luxury. And my name is Stacey Murphy Ogaldez, and I am the head vixen of the Vixen Academy. And today I'm going to be taking you through a training called Tiny Luxury on a Budget, the 3 money steps to make your tiny dreams come true. All right. And I will also share a little bit more about myself as I'm going through this training as well. So why don't we go ahead and hop on in? All right, everybody. Let's see here, man in this. Okay, so I am a teacher at heart. I'm a teacher, I'm a trainer, and I'm a coach. So today I'm going to share with you my tiny journey. So yes, because I'm also living in a tiny, and I'm going to share with you these 3 money steps that you can make so you can achieve tiny luxury on a budget. So step number 1 is doing your homework. Step number 2 are the financials, the big thing that a lot of you are here to hear about. Step number 3 is execute and creative problem solving. Now I'm here with you for an hour. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to leave the last 15 minutes to really have some robust Q&A. So I provided a workbook for this training, and it's right there on the side, Tiny Luxury on a Budget. So if you did have the opportunity to download the workbook ahead of time, kind of pull that out so you can take notes that are in there. And if you didn't have the opportunity to download it ahead of time, I believe Jill will be able to put a link in the chat box of where you can download that. However, if you're driving, if you're doing something else and you cannot download, just make sure you can get it later. We'll make it available in the replay. But whatever you can do, just write down some notes, use your phone, and do what you got to do. So you're going to want to take some juicy notes and have all those questions available for me at the end. Even if there's anything that I may have shared with you that was confusing and you need further clarification, hold that for the Q&A, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. So why don't we hop on into it and start our journey? All right, my little tiny journey. I am a dweller, I'm a DIYer, and I'm also a lady boss because my business is the Vixen Academy. And I have the honor of working with women and teaching women how to be charismatic feminine leaders during the day so they can bring home the money, and then how to be enchanting lovers at night so they can rock it in their relationships. And this is all about having a life and love the way that you would like it. And I'm a relationship and life design coach. And I will actually tell you that my tiny lifestyle is all about how I did my own life design, okay? I am 50 something and I did a major life reboot. So my birthday is coming up in a couple of months. I'm going into my late 50s and I did a life reboot in 22. Right, is when I started off on a crazy nomad journey for over 18 months. And here's why I was an unintentional digital nomad. It's because I was figuring out where to park my house. Something that is very, very important. And here's one thing I would recommend or not recommend. Don't start building your house until you know where you want to park your house, okay? There are a lot of people that have done it the other way around, and then they're in great distress around that. So this is why it took me 18 months in which to do that. Now, what happens is I use the tiny lifestyle to be able to afford California because I was actually moving from Florida. When I was on my digital nomad journey, I was in New York. I'm originally from New York City. So I was in New York for a very long stay. I even was in Colorado, and I was here in California because I really wanted to be sure about my decision of where I wanted to park my car, because this is a big investment that you are doing. So what happened is, since I wanted to move to an area that was more expensive than where I was leaving, I actually used the tiny lifestyle to afford California. And my tiny mansion called the Tiny Vixen has been featured in the Business Insider. So if you do have the workbook, there is a link in there that you can click on to read the full article. And soon my house will be featured on Tiny House Tours. As a matter of fact, I have to get them information tomorrow. And as soon as that's available, we'll let you know so you can see exactly what's inside of my tiny house. So with that, let's kind of jump on in. So step number one, everybody, is all around doing your homework, because as it is, knowledge is definitely power. And here is a case when you are going tiny, ignorance is not bliss. It can add to a lot of expense. It can blow your budget, and it will turn your tiny dream into a tiny nightmare. All right. So the first thing is doing your homework. And so in steps number 1 and 2, I actually broke those down into subsections and bite-sized pieces so that you can digest them, okay? So the first thing in step number 1 about doing your homework is really understanding the lifestyle that you want to have and the role that your house is going to play in your lifestyle. Because how you want to live determines the kind of house you're actually going to build. And so let me kind of expound upon that a little bit more. So for example, is your house going to be your main dwelling like it is for myself? So my house is not only my main dwelling, I work in my house, and my house is actually a large part of my business as well. So what happens is I'm going to design my house in a particular way because I'm in my house almost 24/7. Now, say for example, you're only living in your house seasonally. Maybe only in the summertime, maybe only in the wintertime. So you are going to build a house that's going to be slightly different than myself, because half the time, who knows? You may have it empty, a family member may live there, or you may rent it out on Airbnb for the time that you're not using the house. So what happens is you're going to kind of design your house differently, which your budget is going to reflect that. Then maybe you don't even live in your house at all. It's an investment for you. You're going to use it as an Airbnb, or maybe you're going to use it as an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, which is what they call it here in California. In other words, for an ADU is like a granny flat, a mother-in-law suite, housing for your boomerang children that may come back. And so you put a tiny in your backyard for them. So you have it as an investment. And so if you use the house as an investment, you're going to have different requirements in terms of what you're going to put in your house, how big your house is going to be, and all of that affects your budget. All right. And so this next part in doing your homework is what I call understand your local real estate market, and more specifically, understand the market that you're going to live in. So for example, I was in Florida, but I wasn't going to have my tiny in Florida. So in order to know what was the right amount of money for me to have as my budget, in order for me to know if what I was spending for my house was affordable as well as attainable, I really needed to look at what was the cost of housing in the markets that I was interested in moving into. And that is one thing I've seen a lot of people that when they go tiny and they're trying to determine their budget and the money, they don't think about that one point. They're comparing what their friend may have paid for their tiny or what they see on YouTube that people are paying for their tiny. But here I want you to get a lot more realistic with that. Look at the market that you are going to be moving to. So since I do live now in San Diego County, let's look at San Diego as an example for what I did and use that in terms of for yourself and your own particular set of circumstances. So in San Diego, and this is very current as of April of this year, the average price for a home, a standard home in San Diego, was $1.6 million. Don't stress your brain about that. I know it's crazy, but literally that's what it is. Now, that's all fine and good. However, is that really an apples to apples comparison to what a tiny will be? And the answer to that is no. So it's really important to do a more granular apples to apples comparison. And so this is what I'm going to take you through. So I want you to do your own research in the market that you're in, following this similar criteria. So the first thing you want to do is, a tiny house is less like a standard house comparison and more like a condo. All right. So especially also in size, it also depends on your size of tiny. I know tinies come in like 200 square foot sizes, but then there are also tinies like mine, which is considered a tiny mansion that is over 500 square feet, right? Which is similar to a condo. So if I were to look at what is the average price of a condo in San Diego, it is $500,000. That is the average price of a condo. So that's the first number I'm working with. Now, $500,000, am I going to go there $500,000 with a tiny? I don't think so. That is not the point. You don't want to spend the same amount of money. That is just a benchmark to keep you honest, okay? To keep your budget also realistic for the market you're going to be in. The next thing you have to consider is HOA fees or apartment rent in your area, because that would be the equivalent to a lot rent. I live in a tiny community, so I do pay lot rent. If you own a house that's in a deed restricted community, or if you've ever owned a condo, you know you have to pay an HOA fee. So the lot rent is similar to an HOA fee, which you pay on top of your mortgage if you do have a mortgage for your house, your condo, or your tiny. Now, you don't own a house or a condo, then you would look at the rent in that area. So just to give you an idea, okay, in San Diego, the average HOA fee is between $400 to $800 a month, and that is on top of your mortgage. Now, depending on the amenities that you have in your community, it can be as cheap as $175 or as expensive as $1,700 a month as an HOA fee here in San Diego. I will tell you when I get to breaking down the cost of my home, I will let you know what my monthly lot rent is so you can compare it to there. Now, like I said, you may be renting. So if you rent, the average rent in San Diego is $2,300 a month. Now, nationally, average rent nationally is $1,500 a month. So if you live in a tiny community or in someone's backyard and you're having to pay to use that space, if you can get monthly rent that's below the $1,500, which is the national average, in most cases, you'll be doing really well, all right? So then the next thing in terms of an apples to apples comparison of what you need to consider in your budget is property tax. We don't pay property tax in a tiny or even a tiny mansion. What we do pay is an additional DMV tax. So not only do I pay a DMV tax for my car, like everybody else does that has a car, I pay a second DMV tax for my house, right? So what happens is in California, I literally have to pay it tomorrow. And my DMV tax for my house is right under $900 annually. That is something I do annually, just like property tax is annual. All right, so you want to look at what, like in the local market, what is the average property tax in your market? And so that's how you can also gauge with the DMV. Now, with homeowners insurance, that's something else. Apples to apples comparison. I have full insurance on my house. I have fire insurance, I have earthquake insurance, and I have replacement insurance for the actual structure as well as the contents in my home. All right. And here is the biggest mistake: determining what you want to spend by the market that you're not in, or comparing it to your friends, or comparing it to what somebody paid maybe 5 years ago. Those days are dead and gone. So you have to really be realistic about the market that you're in, how you want your lifestyle to be, because all of that determines the type of house you're going to build. All right. The next thing that goes into doing your homework is your build approach. Now, I've actually identified 3. If you know more of 3, let me know that I can add it in here. But I do know of 3. And so if you're with me and you have your workbook, just to keep everyone honest, we're on page number 7. in your workbook. So in terms of your build approach, the first build approach that a lot of people know about is you get a builder. And the builder will build your house 100% from beginning to end. So that's approach number one. So you have to have the ability. Now, in terms of getting a builder, there are also different types of builders you can get. You can get a friend to build your house, and people have done that. You can get a traditional tiny builder to build your house, and a lot of people do that. But then there's also another type of builder that you can get, which is a park model or manufactured housing builder, okay? Now, I can explain more about those when we get to the Q&A if you're curious about how their whole entire structure is, but you're actually going to hear some of it along the way in this presentation, and I'll tell you in a moment as to why. The second option you can do is DIY. Do it yourself, right? Be that two-time girl, be that two-time guy, and build your house yourself. And you can do it with family, friends, and people that want to have the experience with you if you have the time and depending on your resources and the skills that you have. Now, the third option you can do is a hybrid approach. What the hybrid approach is, now I have a split screen there on the hybrid, and because that is the approach that I took the hybrid approach. And originally on my tiny journey, that wasn't the option that I was going to do. I actually was going to do option number one and have the builder do it from beginning to end. But like I said, you have to pivot. A ton of things are unexpected. And I remember with one of my things that my teacher said, and I held on to this, my Buddhist teacher, he goes, you can definitely plan, but expect half your plans not to go according to plan. And that is exactly what happened to me. So I'm passing on that wisdom to you as well. You can plan, but expect half your plans not to go according to plan. So I had to fire my first builder because of shenanigans and red flags that I started seeing, because this is not my first home that I've owned, and it's not my first home that I've built. This is my fourth property that I've owned, and this is my second new build. So I had experience in doing this, and I saw the red flags. And even though I had been working with them for a year, I fired them. And so what happens is, but I don't have the DIY skills to do it from beginning to end. So I did a hybrid approach, which is the builder that I did get. So I did have more than one builder that I considered. I recommend that you do that because it's going to be part of your budget and pricing things out. Do at least 3 different builders, whether you want to do 100%, whether you want to do hybrid, or if you want to do DIY, because you never know what will happen and you don't want to be caught off guard. So I did the hybrid approach. So what happens is with a hybrid on that top picture, that is how my house arrived from the second builder that I had. That's my kitchen that I showed you when it arrived. No flooring, no major appliances, no handles on the cabinets. There was no shelving on one side. And what happened was with the hybrid is the second half, after my house was delivered, that's when I did the DIY. I hired a contract and we worked together, contractor, and we worked together and we DIY'd the second half. And that is how I was able to customize my house to get exactly what I wanted, because I chose to go with a park model builder. And there is a reason for that. When I get to the expense and the financials, I will actually tell you the difference if I went with a builder that did 100% versus the hybrid approach that I took. The reason why I took hybrid and the builder did certain things is I wanted to leverage their buying power, which I could not do. I priced everything. So if it was cheaper for the builder to do it, I had the builder put it in. If it was more cost effective for me to do it, I did it after the house arrived, right? That's how come some of those major appliances, I did it afterwards because the builder didn't have what it is that I wanted. But there's something else you have to keep in consideration in your build approach, and that is the parking. And the reason why you also have to consider the parking is depending on how you're going to park your house, you may have different requirements for that. So for example, I wanted my house to be built to have 100 amps for the electricity. Well, since I'm in this community, when I sent the specs of my house to the property office, they said, hey, you can't have 100 amps. The park can only take up to 50. So we had to make some changes into my building design. So that is very important as well. How you plan to park it also should be built in there. So say, for example, you're parking this in someone's backyard. Well, they have to be able to provide hookups for you, just like in a community. And the property owner, like say if it's a relative, they say, hey, let's split 50-50 putting in the septic. Well, if that's the case, you need to put that in your budget. When you're in a park, they already take care of that septic for you, so you don't have to worry about that, all right? So that is something that's very important, is your build approach that you're wanting to do. So now let's kind of look at the financials, okay? Show me the money is what I talk about. And so here's where we're going to start getting into more granular types of information. So the first thing here is I'm going to show you mine and what I paid for my tiny, okay? So, and this is why I call it attainable housing, because affordability is different things to different people, just like having the lifestyle that you want is different things to different people, okay? So since I was landing and parking it here in San Diego, I worked with the average cost of a condo, okay? So we already established that's $500,000. And so for the tiny vixen, this is how much I paid for it. And I'm breaking it down in parts and pieces because this is the same thing that you're going to have to do, whether you do DIY, whether you have a builder do it, or whether you do the hybrid approach. Okay. So the base price for my house was $76,000. That was the base price. And the builder, it was a park model builder based here in California. All the contractors I use, everything I, for the most part, sourced was here in California, okay? So that was the base price of the house, of the park model. So if you're wondering, well, what kind of size house you get for $76,000? Well, this would be a house that would be 11 feet wide and about 35 or 34 feet long is the size of this particular house. And it does include all the basic appliances that are in the house. Now, since I knew I was going to be doing a hybrid approach and the base price or the standard of the house wasn't going to fulfill all of my needs, there were additional things I knew I was putting into the house, which is going to the budget and the expense. All right, so the second thing was the builder upgrades. When I get to the third section, I'm going to share with you what some of those upgrades actually look like on my house. But builder upgrades, tax, title, as well as insurance. That totaled $54,000, okay? The next line item, delivery, house setting, utilities. That totaled $17,000. Now, I will let everyone know, with outside of the expense and the cost of your actual house, the next big expense that you will have is your house setting and delivery. Now, let me give you a real short discussion about the delivery. The closer let me rephrase that. Wherever you get your house built, whether you use option 1 or option 3, wherever you get it built, and the closer that it is to where it needs to be delivered, where it's being parked, the cheaper your delivery fee is going to be. So case in point, the first builder I was looking at, the closest factory to build the house that I wanted with them was in Texas. To get that house from Texas to California, the delivery charge was going to be $26,000 was a delivery charge for that house. Okay, they got fired. Went with the builder here in California, where they built a house was about 3 hours or so away from San Diego. My delivery charge was $2,500, $26,000, $2,500. That is the big impact. So yet again, wherever you decide to build your house, I would recommend let it be as close as possible to where you're going to park it if you're able to do that, okay? And so that's a delivery. The delivery is commensurate to the close proximity. Now, the house setting. The house setting is going to probably be the next biggest cost that you're going to have in addition to actually paying for the house itself. So what I paid to set my house was $12,000, and it was worth every penny. When you see what they have to do to set your house, and the reason why it's critical, this is the foundation of your house. So you want to make sure it's done right so your house doesn't sink. Okay, so the house when the house starts to settle, so your doors can still close correctly. All of that has to do with how you set your house. And so that was $12,000 that I had to pay to set my house. So this is why that line item was $17,000. And then the final line item was the DIY customization that I did. And I plopped in around $30,000. Around $30,000 is what I plopped into the DIY. So if you bring all of that together, I paid for my tiny mansion $175,000, and I don't have a mortgage. I'm an empty nester. My daughter got married like 2 years ago when I started this journey. So I was able to pay my tiny mansion 100% because when I was in corporate, I was an aggressive investor. So that's how I was able to do it. I'm not a money manager. I'm not a finance person. So you have to do your own research in terms of how you're going to finance. But if you're like in a situation like me, empty nester, you have the finances, that's how I was able to finance my house. And you can also get a loan. Like my daughter, she's in the beginning of doing her life. So they don't have $175,000 they can plug in. So she'll probably have to get a personal loan. Now, what happens is, this is why I say attainable. Because take a look at this. In San Diego, California, the average cost is $500,000 for a condo. And I paid $175,000 for my tiny mansion, which actually is bigger than 550 square feet. You can't take a condo with you. I can take my house with me, right? So what happens is, even looking at that. So when people in California find out how much I paid for my house, their mouth just drops to the ground, because in California, that is definitely affordable and definitely attainable. Now, let's just say I was out in the middle of Iowa, someplace. $175,000 may be a little bit too much. Maybe it's going to be more like $100,000, or maybe even just $75,000. This is why it's important for you to research the area that you plan to park your house. And that is going to tell you whether your budget is realistic and what you finally paid for your house is affordable and attainable. Okay. Now, some of you may mention, okay, that's how much you paid for your house. How much do you pay in order to rent your lot space? And that's what I pay monthly. $1,000, a little over $1,000. Now, I will tell you this is what I'm actually going to start paying in a couple of months. Currently, I only pay $1,000. So my monthly rent is going up by $75, starting in a couple of months. And remember what I said earlier, what the average rent is in San Diego? If you have an apartment, it was $2,300 a month. If you own a condo or a home, and the HOA fee ranged as high as $1,700 a month, but the sweet spot was around $400 to $800. So look at how much I'm paying. And remember, what was the average rent nationally? It was $1,500 a month. So in all of those benchmarks, I am doing really well about what I have to pay monthly for my lot space. But I'm not just paying for the lot space. When you're in a tiny community, we have a community pool. We have a basketball court, if I can say that, right? We have a dog park. There is a rec room. There is even a garden area for people to plant stuff if they don't have space on their lot. And I have a very, very generous size lot. The houses are not next to each other where you can hear your neighbor's conversation next door. There's ample space. So I receive all of those amenities that's included in my monthly rent, right? So those are also things you have to keep into consideration as well. So let's now look at making a budget, okay? And developing your budget and what you need to consider, because there are things that I've already mentioned that you need to consider. So here is the Excel spreadsheet that I developed for my project. When I was in corporate, I did project management. So, I tapped into my project management skills as I was the project manager for the DIY portion of my home. So there were two phases I had to look at. Phase one was the builder cost. So if you're doing option number one, a builder doing it for you, or option number three, which is a hybrid, you're going to have the builder cost itemized down for every single thing you want to do. Now, take a look at something very interesting, especially if you're looking at the screen. Look at the builder cost and line number 17, electrical. I had in there for the 100 amp service. It was going to cost me $160 to do that wiring, and the U means upgrade. So S was standard, U was upgrade. And so what happened was, since the property said you can't do that, okay, we took that line item off, right? And we just pulled it out. Now, if you're doing a DIY, which is option number two, or if you're doing a hybrid, you're going to be also looking at phase number two, which are, okay, what are the things that you have to do and that you have to price out? And so I was in Lowe's, for example. I priced everything. I even did stuff online. I was doing, Bill with Ferguson online. I was looking at Home Depot. I was IKEA. I was pricing things everywhere to make sure I could get the best possible cost and to determine if it was more cost effective for me to put it in afterwards or for the builder to put it in ahead of time. Prime example was this. I did all the major appliances except my dishwasher and the cooktop. I could not get the price that the builder could get for my dishwasher or for the cooktop. So those are the two things I had the builder put in. So here are things that I want you to consider. First, we already talked about how are you going to be using the house? If you're using it as an Airbnb, many times your house is going to be smaller than if you're going to be living in it either seasonally or full time. So that goes into your expense, okay? And it has to be considered in your budget. Know your housing comparables, like we talked about before, to have a realistic budget. Know your build approach. I've talked about that as well, because that goes into how you're going to set up your budget. Your parking, that's also important, because what is going to be the rental fee every single month? What are things that you have to do to set up your house, like your propane tank for your house? Or are you going to do off-grid solar or anything like that? And then you have to know the money that you have on hand. I knew I was going to use my investments, but what is the money that you have on hand? How much cash do you have on hand? How much credit do you have on credit cards? What is your credit score? So maybe you need to take out a loan. So understand that as well, and understand what is going to be paying for what. And then also know your high and low points in your budget. And this is what I mean about high and low points. If you're going to have the builder or any contractor do anything for you in building your home, it's always going to come out more than what they say. Most of the time, I would say 8 times out of 10, it always comes in higher. So my budget was $175,000. You think I'm going to tell the builder $175,000? Of course not. So I told the builder my budget is $125,000 because there were things I needed to do for the house afterwards. And I know builders always go over. Well, my builder, they came in really close. They came in at $130,000, $5,000 over. So here's the other thing. With your budget, you need to pad it 10% on the low end, 10% on the high end. This is what that means. So if my all-in budget is $175,000, that's including a 10% padding to get to that 175 for unexpected things, for incidental things. So here's a prime example of what I'm talking about for unexpected stuff. When my house arrived, I have a big size lot. Okay, we're doing all this, but as we were working on the house, there isn't grass where I'm at. It's like I'm in like a sort of like a desert climate in the mountains, so it was a lot of dirt. And we were tracking so much dirt in and out the house. And I was like, there's no way I can do this after everything is said and done. So one of the unexpected expenses that I had was I had to gravel and rock my entire front yard so I would not be tracking dirt up in my house constantly, like when we were working on the house. So that would be part of an unexpected expense that would go in that 10%. All right. So then here's what also you have to look out for in your budget or when you're establishing your budget. I call it the seen versus the unseen. The seen are all the pretty, sexy, exciting things, the bling bling, the jewelry, and all those things that you see on YouTube that get us so excited, you know, that is the seen. However, you also need to pay just as much attention to the unseen or things I say go unnoticed, because many times they're the boring things. They're the things that, oh God, you don't want to deal with. Like in this journey, I'm sure many of you can understand this. I never researched so much about toilets in my life. Okay. And to me, toilets are not sexy, but you know, you got to research all that. But what happens is those unseen or unnoticed things are many times extremely necessary. Okay. And so because if you don't pay attention to those things, you can be wasting not only time, but you can also be wasting a lot of money and it will blow your budget. So knowing and considering those unseen things or those unnoticed things and putting it in your budget, like I had on the Excel spreadsheet, there's a way I can share that with you and I'll share that with you at the end. But what happens is if you do that, you will actually be saving time and money in the long run. So let me give you a couple of considerations that you need to keep in mind in terms of those unseen things. All right. So the first thing is insulation. Yes, as part of the standard in building my house, it did come with insulation. They all better come with insulation as a standard. If your builder doesn't have insulation as a standard and you have to add that in, you need to look at a different builder if you're going to be doing option number 1 or option number 3. But what happens is with my builder, it came with insulation, but I wanted to increase and have better insulation or more thicker insulation. So I upgraded that and put additional insulation in my roof and in my floor. And I got an additional house wrap. Why? To help with temperature control in my house, to help with moisture in my house, and to help with my utility bill in my house. So case in point, in the winter, because it does get cold here in San Diego, at night, when that sun goes down, it drops 20 degrees and it gets really cold. So what happened is with some of my neighbors, in the winter, they had a monthly utility bill. One had $250, one had $300, someone had slightly over $300. Okay. My most expensive month was $150, and that was it. It is because I upgraded the insulation and had the additional house wrap. So now think over time, the savings I'm going to enjoy, plus the comfort in my home because I chose to do that. And to upgrade the insulation was something like $1,000, I think, was to do that. The next thing, I did an on-demand hot water tank versus a standing traditional hot water tank. And the reason why I did that, water conservation, helps me with my water bill, and also electric. So my system wouldn't have to keep heating that water up when I wasn't using it, okay? Another thing, filtration system. This I did as a post-delivery buy. So this was not through my builder. I did this afterwards, right? And I got the filtration system from talking to my neighbors while I was doing my initial homework. This is why you do your homework. And so when there were several places I was considering to park my house, I talked to people that were already living here. And I talked to them about, okay, what do they like about their house? What they don't like about their house? living in the community, what do I need to look out for? And that filtration system was one thing that several of my neighbors told me about because of how hard the water is. And so they said it will save your pipes and your faucets. So if you are getting one of those fancy, kitchen faucets nowadays that cost $200, you don't want to be replacing that every 6 months because of how the water has corroded the piping. So filtration system. Overhangs, I'll get into that a little bit more of why that's important. And then my propane tank. I purchased it versus renting it. So it is mine. And that was something else I did. That was also a post delivery. That was not through the builder. Okay. And so the biggest mistake here is having the shiny object syndrome is the biggest mistake. Okay. So the next thing is try before you buy. What try before you buy is for 1 month, I stayed in 4 tinies, different configurations, different setups to see what I like and what I didn't like. That will also save you a lot of money as well. So here's what you do. When you do try, first of all, I found all these on Airbnb. That's where you can find them. Take pictures of the layout, especially ones that you like. Take measurements so you can make sure you have the right size appliances for your house. Focus on the flow of the house. What works, what doesn't work. Also, look at how much storage is there. So for example, all of these were Airbnb. All the bedrooms were upstairs. This is why when I built my house, my bedroom is downstairs. I'm not crawling up in my bed. And the one house that was the most modern that I liked, I stayed in the longest, it didn't have enough storage. My suitcase was in my trunk of my car because I couldn't fit it in the house. All right, work the appliances. Make sure you have the appropriate size appliances for your house. There is no way you need to have full-size appliances in a tiny house. It just takes up space and you need that more for storage. The other thing is, do you feel comfortable and safe in the area of the tiny, and do you feel comfortable and safe in your house? All at the same time. And so this was an invaluable experience for me. Now, you may not be able to take 1 month, 4 tinies and all that. Take a long weekend, 3-4 day weekend, maybe once a month or every other month if you can, and try out different tinies and different configurations. So do what works for your budget. All right, number 3, creative problem solving. All right. So here's where I'm getting into a little bit of a show and tell with this, and then we'll go right into some Q&A. And I'm looking at time and I'm trying to go through it as quickly as possible for everybody. All right. So in this section with the show and tell, my house is a little over 11 feet wide, and including my porch, it's 46 feet long. That's why it's called a tiny mansion, and it is a park model. So a park model, it is mobile, it came on wheels. However, a pickup truck cannot pull it, it's too heavy. So it has to be hauled by a bigger semi. That's there, but it gets set up in the same way like a travel trailer, which are the smaller ones. So here's a problem that I experienced with the standard. So the standard is what, if you did absolutely no upgrades, that is what that house would look like. It had no formal entrance. You see the little staircase area over to the left-hand side. So my solution for that, because they only had like a sliding glass door on the side. And to me, that's not a formal entrance. So what I did is I added a 12-foot deck. They came as small as 8 feet. So it was like 8, 10, 12 feet. So I got the larger size of 12 feet. Now, what this did, it allowed me to have double French doors that open completely to the outside, so I can enjoy that California indoor, outdoor living. And it also provided me with covered living space. I go out there in the morning, have coffee out there on my deck. And so with this deck, it gave me, with additional living space, a total square footage of 600, a little under 700 square feet, all right, for that. Now, here's the next thing that was a problem that I had to solve. No overhangs, all right? This house had no overhangs. When I was doing my homework, Other houses or owners that didn't have an overhang or a small overhang, what they were experiencing were water leaks for the damage of water just coming straight down. So what I did is I did an upgrade and added a 1-foot overhang around my entire house so that when it rains, I have nothing that touches my windows. It doesn't touch the side of my house. It goes a foot outside around the perimeter of my home, so I don't have any water damage. That is there. All right. The next problem I had to solve was the crazy kitchen that was in the standard. It was so cramped and it felt like a cave, right? It felt like a cave. And it was just, I really didn't even understand the flow of how they did it. So here was my solution. One of the things I did is I got rid of that half wall that was there, and the refrigerator was on the other side. I also got rid of that little pop-out bar thing. I don't even know why they had it there. It made absolutely no sense. And it just cramped everything in. So you can see the bottom is what my kitchen looks like now. And what I did is by removing those 2 impediments on both sides, it gave me an open kitchen. The other thing I did is I moved the placement of the refrigerator. I got rid of the back door. So where you see in the bottom picture, where the washer dryer tower, that actually is where a back door was. So the builder got rid of the back door and they did washer dryer hookups instead. And so I did all that, and look at how it opened up that space. So I can have multiple people in my kitchen without our butts and backs, bumping into each other, and we can cook comfortably. And I even had like up to 10 people in my living room, and it was very comfortable and very easy because I opened up the floor plan. And so what happens is that is where, in terms of when you're executing things and having to deal with certain types of problems within a house, this is how you can get creative with your design and also work with your budget on certain things. So whatever I didn't want from the builder, they took it out of the price and they gave me a credit so that I can then use it for myself moving forward and when I wanted to customize it. So just to recap, so we can get into Q&A a little bit, I'm sure you have questions that's there. So just to recap things for everyone, step number 1 is do your homework. That is going to save you in time, money, and it will minimize any mistakes that is there. And it will help you with your planning, but remain flexible in your planning. Step number 2 are the financials. I went through very specifically all the things that you should consider when you're doing your budget. Number 3 is execute and creative problem solving. All right. Because what happens is when it comes to also the creative problem solving, when you're doing your budget, also assess, is it really necessary what you want to have in that house? When you do the try before you buy, that is going to answer that question for you. And so the other image on the right is my living room. So you're now seeing it from the other side with the French doors, and both those doors open wide to the outside. All right. And so there's my living room that I got 10 people into in my tiny house. And so what I love to do now is have it under Q&A. So let's just do a Q&A time because we do have about 10 more minutes. If that is okay, I'm not sure if there's another presentation behind me, but for those of you that want to check out a little bit more about me and what I do, there is my website, thevixenacademy.com. And if you want to reach out to me with any questions that may not be able to address in the Q&A, you can reach me by email at vixenacademy@gmail.com. And as we're doing this, so I'm going to also check in chat to see about questions. And if you can, Jel, if you can go ahead also and manage some of those questions, if they want to unmute people so they can ask themselves, that is good. So I want to go ahead and do that. So we're going to open it up for Q&A. And something else I do have for everyone is if you would like, this is a special that I'm doing for Tiny House University, because I appreciate them allowing me to speak with you, is to offer everyone here a special, it's a tiny luxury session consultation with me. So what that includes is you can sit with me for an hour for 60 minutes one-on-one, and you will also get a budget template so that you can start plugging in all of those details, and you'll be able to edit that Excel spreadsheet specifically for you. And I will provide it as doing the hybrid approach. So if you're going to be doing a builder 100%, or if you're going to be doing a DIY, you can still use that. As well as doing, I'm going to provide everyone with the loving relationship bedroom empowerment. Like I said, I'm a relationship and life design coach. So I use a technique when I was designing my house, which I'm going to be sharing it with you, and you will also get that as well. And so if you go ahead and do that, it'll be $47. And so it'll be a 50% savings as a thank you for Tiny House University special. So you can click on that QR code if you would like to do that. So let's see here. I'm scrolling down. Jill, how would you like to do this, my dear? In terms of the questions, let's see here.
Hey, Stacey. So
Hello.
I've already allowed everyone to unmute themselves so they can ask the questions. At the same time, they can also type their questions in the chat, and then I can relay them to you.
All right. Now, I did have, and I see Tara, she has raised her hand. And there was one question that was in chat, which is, do you have an oven below your cooktop? The answer to that is yes. What I have is oh, hey, Tara, how are you, my dear? How are you? Okay, so I'm trying to, all right. So, good to see you, this year. So what happens is, yes, I have a gas. So I have a propane, tank that is on the outside. My propane tank is 120 capacity, and they only put it up to 100 because the propane expands. So that's how big my propane tank is, and it cost me around like $2,500 for my propane tank. So that propane tank does my gas cooktop, it does my dryer, and then it also is the heat to my dishwasher, what also does with my propane. So the builder put in my gas cooktop, and what I have below my cooktop is I have a Panasonic 4-in-1 unit is what I have. So it is and I researched that, and the Panasonic 4-in-1 was like the best on the market. So I got that at Best Buy is what I did. And here's the other thing, people. I did all of my shopping for my major appliances around a holiday to get a sale. So I think it was 4th of July holiday is when I did all my appliances. So I did all the research, but I waited to buy them until there was a holiday. So I got that 4-in-1. So it's my oven, it does my air fryer, microwave, the whole entire 9 yards. So that is what I have underneath. What we did is we removed the doors that the builder put in the cabinet. So we removed those doors. We wallpapered the inside of the cabinet so it can look like it was done that way. And then with my contractor, we built a base unit, and that's what my oven, my Panasonic 4-in-1, sits on and stuff like that. So does that answer your question, Tara? And did you have another?
Thank you.
All
No,
right.
I really appreciate that. I didn't see an oven, but it looked like there was a microwave in the cubby. And so I was kind of wondering how you went about that. So thanks for the information. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it was actually a 4-in-1. So yeah, it looks like a microwave, but it also bakes, and it's amazing. I have to let you know, I'm really, really happy with that. So thank you so much about that. There was another, okay, this question is from Krista, and I'm looking at time. Okay. All right. So Krista's question was, and if you want to be present, Krista, that's fine as well. But Krista's question was your tiny house builder in California? Yes, my tiny house builder was in California, in Corona, California is where they were. If so, did you explore any builders? Oop, the question popped real quick. Did you explore any builders outside of California during your planning? Yes, I did. All right, so Chris, if you want to unmute yourself, you can do that as well. So, yes, I did. I had, when I was first looking, my daughter was actually the one that got me hooked into the tiny lifestyle. Yes, it was my millennial daughter. She's on the young end of millennial, is who got me into the tiny lifestyle. That's another story we can do for another time. But what happens is when I started researching, there was a builder that I looked at in Minnesota. There was a builder and several builders I looked at in Northern California, like in Redding, California, Northern California. I even looked in Southern California. I looked in Central California, and I even looked in a builder in Arizona. So I looked at builders. And I also, though, looked at, and this is what I want to recommend to all of you, look at builders who are traditional tiny house builders, but then also look at builders who are park model builders. And the reason why you need to look at both is park model builders, they do the bigger houses like I have. So if I went to a traditional tiny house builder to build the house that I currently have, it was going to cost me almost $300,000. Hence why builder number one got fired, because I told them what my budget was. They totally ignored it, blew me off, wouldn't answer my questions to my satisfaction as to where's this expense coming from? This wasn't in the estimate. Where did that come from? Yes, and make sure they give you an estimate and line item everything out, okay, to keep them honest. And so what happened is they were like, no, and don't make, especially if you build your house, don't let anyone make you feel that you have your back against the wall with anything, okay? Because, oh my God, I spent this money already and da-da. The only thing I paid for was I worked with a designer, but I had not put one dime yet towards the building of that house yet. So I wasn't out of anything. I didn't break a contract for building the house. So what happens is I went to this park model builder, and you can actually see the significant difference in the price. I even priced some luxury tiny home builders in Colorado, and a house smaller than mine, only 10 feet wide, was going to cost me $250,000. So this is why you have to shop around different types of builders, not just stay with the same tunnel vision type of builders, and talk to people and see what they did as they're moving in. Okay, so Krista, does that answer your
Yes,
question there?
absolutely answers my question. I'm in Northern California, and so
All right.
it's one of those we've gone to several home and garden shows that have tiny builders, that have park models, and I think it's just the comparison is overwhelming. And then when you add in
Yes.
things like delivery fees and the distance, depending on where
Yes.
we want to place it, it just becomes very difficult. But thank you for the suggestions of what to look at. I think what you've shared is what we're seeing is that the size doesn't necessarily make the cost, equal. It
Yes.
depends on the builder and what they're offering. So thank
Yes.
you.
And then the other thing with the builders, I had it at the top of my head. I had it at the top of it. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll come back to me. Oh, I remember it. When you are dealing with a park model or manufactured home builder. So those are the people that build park models. Park model is the technical name of what they're called. It is considered a manufactured home. When you deal with that type of builder, you will not be dealing directly with the builder. You're going to be dealing with a dealer for the builder. So because of that, the dealer that you get will make or break what actually is in your house. I would go with a dealer that has been doing this for a while. Go in some of the houses that they have ordered and done for other people. because not all, just like not all builders are created equal, not all dealers are created equal. Some dealers don't care what their clients have. Other dealers do care what their clients have. Okay, so that's also really important. So I had an amazing dealer that I worked with. So we'll go from there. And I think if we can possibly take one more question. If we do have that, I'm not sure. We see it here. I'm trying to scroll through as well. Oh, we got one new message. Oh, Chrissy said thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome, my dear. I'm going to scroll up real quickly and see if there's any other questions. Okay, Melanie had a question of how do you find a builder you can trust? That's easier said than done. Talk to people. Go in houses that they have built. Look at their reviews online. And then also talk to other owners who have built houses. So for example, if you go to a builder and you say, hey, can I speak to someone that you built their house, right? And if they say, no, you can't do that, red flag, okay? If they give you an estimate and they are changing stuff and they're not disclosing things, red flag. And this is my rule, 3 strikes and you're out. If at the third moment, if they're not answering your questions or if things are not flowing, fired. And that's why I fired my first builder. 3 strikes, you're gone, right? And then you find, you then go, who is your second choice that you're going to work with? This is why you should always have at least 3 options. Part down to 3 options. That way, if one doesn't work, you can go with another backup and you go right there. But what happened, and then belong into like a Facebook tiny group, because that's how we found out about some other builders that were doing shenanigans. And it's because we were in a Facebook group for people like that. So that's what I would say there. And the other thing is your buying power. Like I was paying all cash. And some builders are like, you got to pay 50% or pay the entire thing or whatever upfront. And I was like, no, I will do progress payments. So here's a certain to get it going, because you know they need to get that going, and then do progress payments for the rest. Because I've heard people that have lost money because they gave all their money to the builder and then the builder skip dodge and then they were out of everything. So I do something with progress payments. Now, if you go through a big park model dealer, like I went through one of the big national ones, they will require 50% upfront. But what happens is they're bonded and they're insured. And so you're safer that you're not going to lose your money is pretty much what I'm going to say. And then the other 50% was paid when the house was getting ready to leave their area. That's when the other 50% or the balance was paid when the house was finished and it was getting ready to be towed out. And then I had to pay that before that truck left their factory with my house and things like that. So those are the things that I did and that I recommend so that you can find a builder that you can trust. And I think those are the only questions that we have here and all the only time that I have right now for questions. So I want to thank everybody that joined today. We had a really, really good sized group. So if you enjoyed this class, put in a good word for me with Tiny House University so I can probably teach some more things for you and just kind of let them know what is it that you would like to learn around this whole entire process. And if you'd like to talk with me one-on-one, go ahead and take advantage of the special that I'm doing for Tiny House University, where you can have a tiny luxury session with me and we can all design this. We can kind of do the grand plan, right, of what it is that you like to do. So just go ahead and hit on that QR code and it'll take you to start that process. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for being here with me tonight. And so, Jel, I think I will transfer it back over to you so we can close things out. Ooh,
Great.
let's
Thank
see.
you so much, Stacey. Yeah, I think we've pretty much, yeah, we can wrap up already. Thank you everyone for joining this event. And we'll catch you on the next one on July 25th. Again, if you want to reach out to Stacey, you can also email us and we'll go ahead and connect you. Thanks everyone, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.